Welcome to Iraqi Dinar Update, your go-to source for the latest news, expert insights, and real-time developments on Iraq's currency, economy, and financial reforms. Whether you're a long-time investor or just curious about the dinar, you're in the right place. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, as one of the world's foremost institutions overseeing international monetary cooperation, has played a pivotal role in guiding nations through economic reforms, particularly in the areas of fiscal policy, currency management, and central banking structures. Iraq, a nation rich in natural resources, particularly oil, has undergone a long and complex economic evolution, particularly since the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime in 2003. Central to that evolution has been the question of the national currency, the Iraqi dinar, and how Iraq might eventually recalibrate its currency to reflect its real economic potential, modernize its financial systems, and reintegrate into the global financial community. When people reference the idea that the IMF says Iraq is going through a revaluation, they are pointing to a body of policy advice, reports, technical assistance programs, and language used in IMF documents that point toward structural shifts in Iraq's monetary framework and potentially a change in the exchange rate regime. To understand what it means when people assert that the IMF is signaling a revaluation in Iraq, it's important to first understand the structure of Iraq's current monetary policy and how that relates to its economic potential. For many years, Iraq has maintained a fixed exchange rate regime where the value of the Iraqi dinar is pegged to the US dollar. This peg has allowed the country to manage inflation and import costs in a predictable manner, especially important in a country with a history of war, political instability, and a heavily import-dependent economy. However, this arrangement also comes with drawbacks. A fixed exchange rate limits the ability of Iraq to respond flexibly to economic shocks or oil price volatility, and it restricts the natural valuation of the dinar based on market fundamentals such as trade flows, foreign investment, and the strength of the Iraqi economy. The current public communications by the IMF do not state Iraq is revaluing its currency today in such simple terms. However, they do clearly indicate that Iraq is in the process of enacting reforms that could lead to a revaluation in the near future. These reforms include a variety of steps: digitizing the banking system, enhancing transparency in currency auctions, cracking down on black market dollar sales, improving monetary policy tools, and implementing anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing standards aligned with international norms. All these steps are part of a broader modernization effort that would allow Iraq's central bank, the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, to consider transitioning away from a tightly fixed exchange rate to something more flexible, such as a managed float or an inflation-targeting regime. The Iraqi authorities themselves have not shied away from indicating their ambitions for a stronger dinar. Public statements by Iraqi government officials and CBI representatives frequently reference the goal of restoring the dinar's prestige or aligning it more closely with its true value. These phrases are politically charged but economically rooted. Iraqis remember that before the 1990s, the dinar was one of the stronger currencies in the region. After years of sanctions, wars, and economic mismanagement, the dinar's nominal value fell dramatically, but the fundamentals of Iraq's economy, especially its vast oil reserves, suggest that the currency could regain strength under the right conditions. The IMF's role is not to impose a revaluation, but to help Iraq create the conditions under which such a change is both possible and sustainable. This involves not just exchange rate modeling, but also fiscal policy guidance, support for state-owned bank restructuring, anti-corruption efforts, and even assistance with statistical capacity so that Iraq can gather better data on inflation, trade, and financial flows. All of these are the invisible infrastructure of a revaluation. Without them, any nominal adjustment to the exchange rate would be purely cosmetic or potentially destabilizing. In fact, it is not uncommon for the IMF to advise gradualism in such reforms. Rather than a sudden revaluation that shocks the economy, the IMF tends to favor a process of strengthening fundamentals first, building market credibility, and then letting the currency appreciate naturally through policy credibility and investor confidence. Furthermore, the IMF does not operate in a vacuum. Its reports and guidance are shaped by input from Iraq itself, along with other international stakeholders such as the World Bank, regional development institutions, and bilateral partners like the United States, China, and members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. These nations have a vested interest in Iraq's financial stability and its eventual reintegration into regional trade and investment flows. As such, there is a multi-layered architecture of support behind Iraq's ongoing monetary reform. In summary, when one says the IMF is clearly stating Iraq is going through a revaluation, it is a reasonable interpretation of the evolving guidance and language found in the IMF's communications. The IMF is not predicting a revaluation, it is preparing Iraq for one. It is helping Iraq put the building blocks in place, a functional and transparent financial system, modernized monetary policy tools, digital banking integration, and stronger governance mechanisms at the central bank. All these steps point in the direction of a future in which the Iraqi dinar may be revalued to reflect its real effective exchange rate, its economic fundamentals, and its rightful place in regional trade dynamics. That process is well underway. The IMF's own wording in its latest documents points to Iraq's ongoing transformation, referencing macroeconomic stabilization efforts, greater flexibility in exchange rates, and structural reforms that, in their own words, will help enhance the credibility of monetary policy and support exchange rate stability. That credibility is a key prerequisite to any revaluation. A currency gains value not just from the raw resources of a country, but from the confidence that people, investors, trading partners, and Iraqi citizens alike have in the institutions that back it. The IMF is playing a quiet but essential role in restoring that confidence in Iraq. So while the revaluation may not yet be official, the journey is well documented, and the signals are increasingly unmistakable. Iraq is not simply stabilizing its economy, it is redefining it. And in that redefinition lies the rationale for why the Iraqi dinar, supported by IMF guidance, may soon reflect a higher value than what the world has grown accustomed to seeing over the past 2 decades. The IMF doesn't make bold announcements, it sets the framework. And the framework is already in motion. Iraq is, indeed, going through a revaluation, technically, structurally, and soon, very possibly, officially. Thanks for tuning into Iraqi Dinar Update. If you found this content helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat on Iraq's evolving financial landscape. Stay informed, and stay ready.